When most of us think back to our first video game, we think of sitting with friends around a game console, playing games like Mortal Kombat, Mario Kart or Tetris. Until recently, I had assumed that this is all video games were. Video games actually have a much broader definition, including anything from apps on your iPhone to fitness games and flight simulators. Extinguishing this image of a boy using a controller to play mindless video games. The video games were first created in 1952. They quickly grew in popularity due to the enjoyment people found of being able to manipulate our virtual reality. In the past decade, however, they have gained a negative association because of claims that they are exposing youth to violence and preventing people from living an active, healthy lifestyle. Interestingly, these claims are unfounded, and research suggests that video games have enabled positive educational, social and health benefits on society. Thus, it is evident that while some video games have explicit content, this should not be responsible for all video games being labelled bad for society, as many video games in fact are good for society. Many of us are guilty of spending hours a day on our phone apps. Does this mean that we are more violent because of it? You'll be surprised to know that video games have opened the floodgates for other professions and educational institutions to develop the use of video games as a support for learning. For example, doctors both utilise and manipulate a virtual reality to improve dexterity and be an effective tool for teaching. Much the same goes for pilots. Video games as a flight stimulation have been used to recreate an in-flight scenario for recruitment and training. Since this invention, there has been a significant decline in both the military and civilian aviation. Educational institutions have also joined the video game bandwagon, using the term edutainment media. With the use of video games as an educational tool, professionals have seen a drastic incline in the improvement in fields such as language, math, reading and social skills. My 2-year-old niece can accurately recite the alphabet because of an ABC app. To say video games are bad for society is looking at social issues backwards. Professor Gortlet has written a paper on the 10 things wrong with the media effects model. He states that a kid is violent, so he commits violent acts, without taking identity, background or environment into account, and is one of the biggest assumptions surrounding media today. Just because one small portion of video games features explicit content, saying that all video games are bad for society because of this, when they are clearly benefiting fields such as medicine, aviation and education, is completely inaccurate. Not only are video games educational, but they can also provide positive social benefits, as many video games come with the ability to communicate with other players through webcam and/or microphone, allowing players to feel a sense of community and ultimately bringing different cultures together. For people living in rural, isolated communities, this interaction can bring a sense of belonging to the individuals, who at times can feel quite alone. In a study conducted by Rossellio et al., it identifies that casual use of video games has shown a drastic decline in stress and depression in players. Games such as Wii Fit and Just Dance also eradicate the notion that video games have health benefits to the players. Furthermore, although the majority of talk involving violence in video games is surrounding the game of Grand Theft Auto, which features very explicit content, this game is rated R18+, which is an effective rating. How is it that the youth are being blamed for the violence of this game, when the youth shouldn't be really playing the game to start with? Much like the car crash analogy, if a teen drove a car without a license and crashed it, we wouldn't blame the car. So why is this any different? Much the same, linking back to Gortlet's theory on contextualizing that means behind the action, such as background and so forth. Throughout the research conducted in the preparation for this debate, it was hard for me to find any real correlation between video games and the crime rate, in any generation for that matter. Do we blame soccer as a game if its players become more violent outside the field? Not really. So why do we blame video games? That's why it's important to really think about the more contemporary applications of the vast improvement of video games that are now benefiting so many aspects of society technologically. It says that video games are bad for society. Really, is it just a scapegoat to avoid facing and dealing with what the real issues at hand are?